Welcome back to my podcast. We're in episode 83. Last time, I told you about Badal and how ecstatic I was when he asked me out. I got dressed for my date with Badal with great attention to detail, my hygiene, cleanliness, even though my natural smell was always pleasant. Skin dewy and glowing, every hair in place, pretty innerwear. I looked my best. It was a lunch date. While we were out having lunch, I was so nervous I could barely eat. I offered my almost untouched meal to Badal if he wanted it, and he asked me if I was sure I was not hungry. He had the food, and we got into his car and went to his apartment. Molly had earlier informed me how Badal had his own apartment. His parents lived nearby. Being in India in the 90s, I found this very surprising and curious. Nobody did this. None of the young people we knew just went and lived in a separate apartment from their parents. So I asked Molly the reason, thinking they'd had a fight or something. But she said no, he just has his own apartment. And his relationship with his parents was fine. So we walked into his apartment and started getting cozy. Smitten as I was with Badal, I could see he had zero skill. Probably because he never tried to please a woman before, or maybe he simply didn't care to. I don't know. Or he was just, completely clueless. But irrespective of his skill or effort, I was so enamored that I was actually in the same room as Badal and had his complete attention that it was more than I could ask for. Badal, on his side, had remembered some obscure comment I had made previously in an effort to sound cool, maybe. I had mentioned that I found a stubble attractive. I mean, it did look good on some people, but in reality, I couldn't care less either way. So Badal's special effort for me was to grow a stubble for our date. Badal kept rubbing his stubble into my cheeks, thinking I loved it. In reality, my skin was way more sensitive and softer than the average person's, and I had red welts or scars on my cheeks for the next couple of days, and it looked like a cat had scratched my face multiple times. But since I had told him I liked a stubble, I just gritted my teeth and tolerated that horrible, coarse sandpaper rubbing on my face. As we were making out in the bedroom, Badal heard a key turn in his main door. Next thing, his mom is calling out his name. Badal started panicking because his folks had never come to his apartment. He immediately locked the bedroom door and started pacing nervously. It was a comical sight to watch the naked Badal pace the bedroom having a panic attack. He kept whispering, "She's never come here. Never. She never does this." Badal hoped that his mother would just think he was not at home or that he was asleep and she would leave. But she just kept calling out, "Badal, Badal." Just kept calling. But then we remembered that my bag and my shoes were in the living room. Of course, his mom would figure out that he had a girl over. And here's the fun thing, he'd never had a girl over before. So the one time he did, within 10 or 15 minutes, his mom walked into the house. It was so freaky, I was just amused. Badal called up a friend and asked him to come over and take his mom away using some excuse. This was the 90s, so no texting. We just had landline phones, and luckily he did have a phone in his bedroom. We waited quietly with bated breath, and finally the friend arrived. We heard a muffled conversation, and then the friend and the mother left after the brief conversation. Well, the moment was ruined for us, and we left soon after. Badal probably went wherever the friend had taken his mom, and I went home. Nice date. After a few days, still very much smitten with Badal, I was keen to meet up again. We did meet on and off at Molly's college, but we wanted more one-on-one time. At least I did, for sure. And so we made a plan for one of the Navratri nights. That was the perfect excuse. I told my mom that Swati had invited me to spend a night dancing at her place, and Molly had said something similar about her friend. The plan was for a bunch of us to hang out at Badal's place. I informed Swati about the plan and thought she would have my back. Instead, she said she did not want to get involved. This confused me because I'd have done that for her in a heartbeat, and I couldn't understand why she was behaving like this. Later, I was talking to Badal on the phone, confirming the plans. Of course, I was pretending I was talking to Swati, to my mother. At the end of my phone conversation, Mom said she too wanted to talk to Swati about me going over and started to take the phone receiver from my hand. This was a landline phone, of course. I panicked, knowing that all hell would break loose if Mom found out that I wasn't talking to Swati but to a guy. I wrestled the phone out of Mom's hand and slammed the receiver down. Mom was very shocked because I had never behaved like this. I was a good girl. Luckily for me, she did not dial back or demand that I call up Swati again so that she could speak to her. I was very excited and looking forward to my time with Badal at his house. So, on the day Molly and I went over in the evening, as did a few other of her college friends. But Lavina and Hema were not there, just a few guys and us. As we all sat together laughing and joking, Badal ran his hand along my foot. We locked eyes and smiled. I had not realized that someone had noticed, but they had. Now I knew that it was Badal's routine to go hang out with his friends every evening. Molly had told me earlier. I'm not sure where and which friends, but he did this every day. In spite of that, I was very shocked when he left that day too. Not so much as a goodbye or explanation to me. He just left. I stood there in disbelief. I had literally risked my well-being and my bones to coordinate this one night. And Badal could not miss a hangout with his friends one frigging day? What? I experienced a mixture of fury, disappointment, and plain disbelief. The person who had observed all this was Munna, the guy who was not even a student, but just hung out with these people. Personally, I did not like Munna at all. In fact, I was a little uncomfortable around him. He low-key gave me the creeps. So my least favorite person in this group. Now, with Badal out and me fuming, Munna took his chance. He stepped in and asked me if I wanted to go on a bike ride. I just dismissed it. I brushed it aside, but then he asked again. He was persistent. Objectively, a bike ride at night in Mumbai with a breeze in your face sounded amazing to me. And he'd said just a 10-minute ride. Just like for a bit, to make me feel better. And in my mind, I was getting back at Badal by stepping out and enjoying myself instead of seething indoors. So I agreed. Some of the others in the group seemed surprised and tried to dissuade me. They asked me why I was stepping out. And I just said, well, a bike ride, how bad could it be? And Badal left, didn't he? I made sure to carry something to hold in front of my chest so that I wouldn't bump into Munna whenever he hit the brakes. And off we went. He laughed when I held something between him and me so that my chest was protected. Well, I did not know how Munna's mind worked. In fact, I had no idea how a typical guy's mind worked. At the time, I had grown up watching the most romantic movies and reading similar stories where a guy was super committed to his love and that sort of thing. At the time, I thought that just like girls, guys too dreamed of that one special person that they would love forever and be so devoted to and be so kind and loyal to. Munna, on the other hand, had his designs on me. He had probably seen Yash kiss me at the nightclub earlier, and then he had seen Badal flirting with me. Is it possible he thought I was just available to anyone? Or did he just think he would try his luck? Or maybe he was genuinely attracted to me. I don't know. Because that was the farthest thing from my mind. As far as I was concerned, Munna did not exist. He was a non-entity, an NPC. He just happened to be around every time we hung out, like an annoying buzzing fly. Mildly annoying, but I could tune him out. Why did I agree to go out on that bike ride with him? Was it just to piss off Badal because he had pissed me off? Or was it simply because he asked? At that time, with the way I had grown up, I still, in my subconscious at least, thought I had to obey. May not have been a conscious thought, but somewhere deep, I felt like I had to do something simply because someone asked. I know this doesn't make sense to an assertive person who had grown up with a healthy sense of self, but we had a messed up dynamic in our family. Moreover, I've constantly heard the argument that oh, so and so is an adult, capable of making their own decisions. Well, technically, yes, but not really. The playing field is not level, you see. So often, when we find ourselves in a place where we've been thrown into the real world, so to say, not all of us are prepared or equipped with the right tools. Some of us actually enter the arena with one hand tied behind our backs or with our eyes closed, so to say, or worse. And having failed to develop the skills required to successfully navigate the real world, many of us end up more vulnerable when we are outside our safe and protected environments. And so, my inability to make sensible decisions that were good for me had brought me to this moment. Munna had insisted that we would just ride around for 10 minutes or so. And so, when 10 minutes had passed and we were still riding away from Badal's house, I urged Munna to turn around. In a moment, he said. I sat back. Again and again, I asked Munna to turn around. Again and again, he assured me that we would. But he did not turn around. I now remembered that he had been on the phone with someone before we had left the house. At the time, I thought he was merely arranging to borrow a friend's bike. But still, I was too naive to get worried or think that I was in actual danger. Munna was this mousy, puny guy. And I still had a simplistic view of the world, not believing that someone who seemed to be an average person could be evil. Well, I'm not sure exactly what had hatched in Munna's mind, but we ended up at a nightclub. At the time, we used to call them discs, short for disco. I asked Munna to turn around and go back, relieved that we had finally stopped somewhere, but also confused why he had brought us all the way to this western southern part of the city at some nightclub. Like, why? Literally, you had invited me for a 10-minute bike ride, so what are we doing at a nightclub? And with my sense of direction, I wouldn't even know where we were, which part of the city, and which nightclub this was. Well, so I just wanted to go back. Munna kept begging that, hey, let's just spend some time here. Little bit, just a few minutes. Come on, we're here. Let's just dance a little. So Munna kept begging, and I finally relented to spend just a little time there before we could go back. I was like, why did this guy bring me here? We entered, and the music was pumping, but no one was on the dance floor yet. Everyone was standing around, seemingly too shy to step on the dance floor yet. Maybe they were waiting for someone else to start. Or maybe they just needed to drink a little before they got started. I don't know. I was not familiar with the nightlife scene. The only time I had been to a nightclub was at the 3 to 6 session, which was, I guess, just targeted at students who could not step out later than that. So I guess it may have been too early in the night yet. Now, I loved to dance. And since we were here at the nightclub, I asked Munna to dance, if that's what he had brought me here for. Munna seemed super reluctant and shy now, seeing that no one else was on the dance floor. Now, as far as I was concerned, either we danced or we left. I don't know what I was doing here anyway. If I had entered a nightclub and the music was good, might as well dance. Make lemonade if you find yourself with lemons, I guess. So I started dancing, alone. As I danced, I prompted Munna to join, gesturing with my hand for him to come to the dance floor. Munna was too hesitant, looking around at the others, and he may have stepped on the dance floor just for a few seconds. I really can't remember. I guess this is how the scenario had played out in his head. He probably just wanted to seduce me, or he thought I was just available for a good time. So he expected a crowd on the dance floor and maybe thought he could get close to me while dancing. But here was an abandoned dance floor and nobody willing to dance yet. I got annoyed and told Munna I wanted to leave. What was the point of this fiasco anyways? I had literally thought we were out for a few minutes to enjoy the night breeze. And here I was, at the other end of town, feeling stuck in this situation that was forced upon me, it felt like. I had not really come across people who deceive you to get their way or just lie through their teeth. So this was very confusing for me. Like, why was he doing this? Why had he said one thing and done something else? It did not make sense and was not logical. Did he think he was endearing himself to me by lying and deceiving? It was having the opposite effect. I thought so little of him anyway, and now my opinion of him was even worse. We finally went back to Badal's place. When Badal came back, he very easily managed to sweet talk his way back into my good books. I can't remember what I was thinking all those many years back, but I probably thought that the one night I had taken so much risk for to have alone time with Badal should not be wasted away just being angry and pouting. I can't remember if Molly was with Anuj, but I do remember getting alone time with Badal finally. Either Badal did not believe in foreplay or simply did not know it existed. But within minutes of us having privacy, I felt pressured to go ahead with the final act. It was like he wasn't doing anything. So, this is not what I had in mind. I was just so into Badal. I just wanted to be with him. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I was disappointed about just how uninspired Badal was in the bedroom, and I also found myself confused at our utter lack of rapport or talking. It was as though Badal had no interest in getting to know me, which he didn't, of course. He didn't view me the way I viewed him. My idea of being interested in someone was very different from his idea of being interested in someone. And so, about 5 minutes of getting undressed and kissing, Badal showed me something special he had done for me, which was he had shaved down there. I looked, not knowing how to react. Here was Badal in front of me, in his undies, something that I had not dared to even dream about. And yet, the moment was pretty meh. And side by side with this background, I was also still very enamored with the idea of Badal, and I was very awestruck that I was nude with Badal. I felt that this was very special. The feeling was similar to when a fan meets a movie star and they're like, whoa, this is actually happening. When it came down to it, Badal could not penetrate. I guess nowadays people call it vaginismus, a medical condition. But here is my opinion. Since birth, for me at least, those muscles had been in that closed up position, tightly sealed shut, unmoving and tightly together. There had been no reason for them to ever move from their place. For all practical purposes, I did not even know that I had an opening down there. The only proof of the opening was the monthly period. And no wonder the pain was excruciating when I passed a clot. So, other than when Farzad had muscled his way through, these muscles were in no mood to budge. They were pretty comfortable where they were, thank you. Badal was not one to muscle his way through, and after a couple of attempts, just stopped trying to penetrate. I felt very bad, like I had let him down. I went to the bathroom and cried. When I went back to the room, I was very apologetic. Badal just brushed it off, and that was it. Next time, I'll tell you more about these people. Till then, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye for now.